The ocean looked calm when the fleet left Lisbon in 1503. Dozens of ships loaded with gold, spices, silk, and terrified sailors pushed slowly into the Atlantic, heading toward the dangerous trade routes of the Indian Ocean. But one of those ships carried something far more valuable than cargo. It carried Vasco da Gama's uncle, Vicente Sodré, commander of a powerful Portuguese squadron sent to protect Portugal's growing empire overseas. Instead, his decisions would lead to one of the most horrifying shipwreck disasters of the Age of Exploration. By the early 1500s, Portugal had become obsessed with controlling the spice trade. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg were worth fortunes in Europe, and Portuguese fleets sailed thousands of miles around Africa to reach India before their rivals could. The voyages were brutally dangerous. Sailors faced starvation, disease, mutiny, storms, and shipwreck long before they even saw land. But the profits were so enormous that kings kept sending more ships. Vicente Sodré was not an ordinary captain. He commanded a heavily armed patrol squadron tasked with protecting Portuguese trading posts in the Indian Ocean from Arab merchants and rival naval powers. But Sodré had his own ambitions. Instead of guarding Allied ports as ordered, he decided to hunt wealthy merchant ships for treasure. His squadron drifted farther from safe harbors and deeper into dangerous waters near the coast of Oman. At first, the gamble worked. Portuguese ships intercepted trading vessels carrying silver, spices, fabrics, and precious goods from across Asia and the Middle East. Crews celebrated on crowded decks while captured cargo piled higher inside the hulls. But the Indian Ocean was entering storm season, and local sailors warned Sodré repeatedly that the northern coast was deadly during those months. The winds would soon become violent enough to tear fleets apart. The warnings were ignored. In April 1503, Sodré anchored his ships near the Korea-Murea Islands off the coast of Oman. The location looked protected, but experienced local navigators understood the truth. Once the seasonal storms arrived, the anchorage would become a death trap. Arab pilots begged the Portuguese captains to move their ships into safer waters immediately. Some officers wanted to leave. Sodré refused. Then the sky changed. Dark clouds swallowed the horizon as powerful winds slammed into the anchored fleet. Waves crashed against the wooden ships with terrifying force, snapping ropes and dragging anchors across the seafloor. Masts bent violently while sailors screamed through sheets of rain and flying saltwater. Entire sections of rigging ripped loose into the storm. One Portuguese ship managed to escape before the full storm arrived. Others were not so lucky. Sodré's flagship was smashed by massive waves that drove the vessel against jagged rocks near the islands. The wooden hull cracked apart under the pressure of the sea. Water exploded into the lower decks as terrified sailors fought desperately to stay alive. Cannons broke free from their restraints and crashed through flooded corridors, crushing men in the darkness. The storm did not stop. Huge waves tore surviving sailors from the deck and hurled them directly into the ocean. Armor, weapons, and soaked clothing dragged many men underwater instantly. Others clung to floating wreckage while watching pieces of the fleet disappear into black water around them. Some sailors were smashed against rocks before they could even swim. Vicente Sodré himself vanished during the disaster. According to later accounts, he either drowned beneath the waves or was pulled apart with the wreck of his ship as the storm consumed it. His body was never recovered. When daylight finally returned, the coastline was covered with debris. Broken masts, shattered barrels, torn sails, floating bodies, and splintered wood drifted across the water. Survivors crawled onto the rocky islands exhausted, starving, and surrounded by the remains of the fleet. Many were injured. Some had lost entire families and crews during the night. But the nightmare was not over. The survivors were stranded far from major Portuguese ports with limited food, damaged equipment, and almost no reliable shelter. Fresh water quickly became a desperate problem under the brutal heat of the Arabian coast. Injuries became infected. Supplies rotted in seawater. Some survivors reportedly fought each other over resources while others searched the wreckage for anything useful. Worse still, the disaster damaged Portuguese control in the Indian Ocean at a critical moment. Local rulers and rival merchants saw the wreck as proof that Portugal's growing naval empire was not invincible. The loss weakened Portuguese influence across important trade routes and exposed how fragile these massive exploration missions really were. The Age of Exploration is often remembered through maps, discoveries, and triumphant voyages. But the reality was far more brutal. Wooden ships crossed oceans that sailors barely understood. Storms could erase entire fleets in a single night. A wrong decision by one commander could doom hundreds of people thousands of miles from home. And in the end, Vicente Sodré's fleet was not destroyed by enemy cannons or naval warfare. It was destroyed by arrogance, greed, and the unforgiving power of the sea itself. The same ocean that made Portugal rich also swallowed its ships without mercy, leaving behind one of the most terrifying shipwreck disasters of the entire Age of Exploration.